What's going on, everybody? I'm back with a different Valkyrie video. Kind of again another deck discussion about the deck. I've gone through some changes since my last video. I don't know why the fuck I even bother making these videos, but here I am, ready to make another fucking one about this fucking archetype that I cannot stop for some reason building. Uh, I've kind of just really thought about it a lot, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that this is probably the best I can make this deck possibly. I've spent actually years fucking with this deck, and as of now, with the current card pool that's out right now, this is probably the best I could possibly make it that makes sense to me. Now, I put in a lot of interesting tech cards in this deck, as you can tell. I've also gone through some revisions and a little bit of a changed mind mentality about some things. So let me go ahead and go into the card by card, and then we'll go ahead and I'll discuss my thoughts and processes behind all of these cards one by one. So, going first into the card list, we look at here and we see Sigrun. I think Sigrun is an actually really good card, but she lacks the opportunity to really shine. And what I mean by that is that she has the ability to have a self summoning condition and have the ability uh, to swarm. Right, she has the ability to bring something from hand or graveyard onto the board with her when she does get special summoned, either through her own summoning condition or something else. The problem is, though, is that fulfilling this summoning condition is actually really difficult. Now, we do have a continuous spell in the deck. It's I'll get to that when we get to it, but it's only subpar, is what I'll say for now. If she, and I'll get to my, at the end of the video again, I'll talk about what I think the deck needs, but what I would really like to see, just from when we're talking about Sigrun in a vacuum, is I would like to see this card have a Valkyrie card that works with her. That makes sense. You know what I mean? That makes sense for the deck to have. So, well, we're done with her for now. Uh, I ordered this just by I just clicked sort, and this is what it gave me. So we'll skip Trio Sicaria, and we're gonna skip the Gamma Seals as well. We'll get to them after the Valkyrie cards. Next we have Erda. As of now, Erda is probably your win con when it comes to this deck. When it comes to really pushing the envelope of what the deck can do, this is the card. This is the card you go for if you really want to fulfill that OTK condition. Not only that, it just screws your opponent over. This card is very good. The reason we only play one is because we only want one. We don't want to really draw it. It doesn't have a summoning condition like Sigrun does, and she's okay. Again, drawing it isn't the worst, but it's not the only time it's not the worst is when you draw right of the Valkyries. You know what I mean? Most of the time we're gonna have our other ways of getting to this card that doesn't include just drawing it. We just don't want to draw it. It's not good enough. Going on to level 7s now, we have Brunhilde. Brunhilde is pretty good if your opponent has a big board. Otherwise, this card is only subpar. The unaffected by spells is really weird on this card. The battle protection is also really weird. It's the only one that really can really get to big attack easily. Other cards get to bigger attack, I'll say that. But she's the only one that does it fairly easily. But at the same time, it's, when all is said and done and you're going for that second battle phase and your opponent doesn't have any monsters, she's only got subpar attack. I like her as a flavor option. I don't really care for her to be in the main con, the main conceptual win con, the way Erda just brings everybody else down, which effectively brings all of your monsters up. You know what I mean? I like Erda better in this sense. Next is White. I think Zweite is really good. Definitely a decent one of. I don't think playing two. There's a little bit of a justification for two, but I really don't think you need it. We have lots of ways of getting it from the deck, including the level 1 here, Sexte, but Zweite is fine. The ability to recycle a continuous spell is, again, only a subpar inclusion in the deck, just mostly due to the fact that there's just really no good continuous spells to really mess with. Um, it's whatever. It's okay. I wish the attack was a little bit better. That's a little disheartening. Next we have Drite. Drite is fucking insane. It searches any Valkyrie card on summon or special, which is very nice. But another thing that's really important about this card is it gains 200 attack for every banished monster your opponent has. That is important. It's very important. And when you pair it with other attack gaining effects and other cards that banish cards, suddenly this card is getting to a massive number of attack very quickly. Very quickly. Very nice. Drite is very nice. Next is Virte. Virte, in my opinion, is extremely underrated. This card is actually really freaking good. Like, really fucking good. This card is ridiculous. Now, I'm going to say a few things. It's a subpar opener, right? It's a subpar opener in the fact that, okay, I'm going to bang my head against this just to fucking start something. Because when she's destroyed by battle, she floats from the deck, which is very important. Having a floater that can summon from the deck is, it's a Mystic Tomato, but for Valkyries, but you work with what you got, and what she does is nice. And so by saying that, she also has a very nice effect of excavating to get to normal, specifically normal spells and normal traps. You can't grab normal or continuous or quick plays or counters. It has to be normal, and that's why we do have a normal trap in here, and we have some normal spells. Mostly these is what you want, or this is only subpar. This is okay, but really you want this or you want this. That's the idea behind it. But yeah, we'll get to those cards when we get to them. But basically, yeah, that's Virte. Very nice card, very good. I have to do some very interesting plays with her all the time. The way you can dance between her ability to float into more things. You take her. In the first turn, your first battle phase, you bang her against something. She floats into something like Sigrun from the deck. Sigrun activates, summons back Virte, activate Mischief. You're on the second battle phase, and then you're in the second battle phase. Virte bangs her head again against something. Then you bring Erida, or then you bring Brunhilde if you already have them, or you can bring in another, Sigrun from the deck, and then summon something else that you already had in play or something, to then continually build up your forces. I think Virte is very nice. Next is Funte. I think Funte as a 1 is another very strong 1-of. No reason to play any more than 1. She's an alternative way of getting to Mischief of the Time Goddess if you can't get to Rite of the Valkyries, which is very nice. And she boosts all your monsters up. If you really need that attack boost, and if you have the opportunity to really take advantage of her, it's very nice. Funte is very nice. Very underrated card as well. If I was going to talk about the most underrated cards in this deck, I would say it's this one and Virte. These two cards are kind of insane, actually. So I really like these cards. I like these cards in design quite a bit. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're fun. I think they're interesting. They add a little bit of dynamicy to the deck, more than you would think they do, right? Next we have Diviner of the Heralds. Diviner is an alternative sort of start condition to starting your plays, because basically what she does is you activate her, you send a fairy from deck or extra deck, but what you're going to send is Trios Arcaria, which we skipped over before. Oh, actually, well, I'll just talk about it now. I was supposed to talk about this next, but whatever. It kind of, Diviner and Sexte are one and the same, essentially, the way I like to work with the two of them. But yeah, so Diviner activates, sends Trios Arcaria. Trios Arcaria can then tribute fairies to summon itself from the graveyard or from hand during the main phase only, which is kind of annoying. I wish it was battle phase, but for some reason they said main phase only. So we take it where we can get it. You know what I mean? So Trios Arcaria is also very good. It's very underrated. Man, this card just has so many restrictions. I wish it didn't. Firstly, the main phase only quick effect. Wish it wasn't that. Secondly, the ability that when you do use its effect to summon itself, it gets banished afterwards. I wish it didn't do that, because these other effects are crazy. So if you do tribute 2 or more fairies, it non-target destroys something on your opponent's board, which is fucking great. And it all activates either from the hand or the graveyard, depending where it is. So because it non-targets, it doesn't resolve on board, so they can't like Veiler it or anything like that. It resolves in hand to do these effects. On summon, it's activating these cards, these effects at the same time it's being summoned. So, nextly is if you tribute 3, you get the draw 2, which is also really nice in this deck. So another thing I really don't like playing is with discard effects, just because this deck needs every fucking card it can get. Every card. Which means that going second is a requirement, because you need to have those 6 cards. Pot of Extravagance is insane. You don't always need it, but boy, is it fucking nice. So, like I said, every card is very important, and the fact that you could potentially get a draw three. And the thing is, like, going from turn like two onwards, like after turn two, your Valkyrie monsters, if they're not getting the OTK, don't matter as much. So you can get rid of as many as you want. Start going for these link climbs, all that stuff. And if you have Trio Sarkaria still locked and loaded because you didn't have to use Diviner before, you having to draw into Diviner, that's very nice. Or if you already, let's say, I mean, that's usually going to be the case, is that you just haven't used Diviner. You didn't really need to use Diviner. Or if you didn't draw Diviner but you drew Trias Icaria, like, that's still pretty good. Like, this card is still very nice. So yeah, Diviner then, when she's tributed, floats into a level 2 or lower fairy from the deck. So the one you're going to want to go into is the one that on special summon, then special summon something else from the deck, a different Valkyrie monster, which then you can see how it kind of combos. You summon this, and then you could summon Druid, get a search, summon, Sigurd, and summon something else from your hand, and it's just like a whole. They all swarm nicely. They swarm decently, not amazingly, but decently. Everything makes sense. And then lastly, we'll go over the last 6 monsters here since we already did the Diviner stuff. Next we have Gamma Seal going second. Gamma Seal is super important. Gets rid of problematic cards like because we don't really have negates and we don't really have nice removal either. Like all of our removals either destruction removal or targeted removal, which doesn't work against a Dragoon. We don't actually have an archetypal removal to Dragoon, which is a problem. So a card like Gamma Seal comes in super fucking clutch, as well as like if it, straight up if their attack is 4,000, we have a very little chance of destroying it. I'm just gonna be straight up like destroying something with 4,000 attack is very difficult for this deck. So if you happen to get Dragoon to 4,000, it's gonna be very hard because this Erudite only reduces it by 1,000, so it goes to 3,000. Getting something over 3,000 attack in this deck is very difficult. So as you can tell, Dragoon is a very bad matchup unless you have something like Dark Ruler no more. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Or Gamma Seal. So Gamma Seal is very nice. It's very good against Sky Striker and all that stuff. Don't have to deal with Ray floating around and stuff. Yeah, I think Gamma Seal is. I was almost hard pressed to put more Kaiju's in the deck, but I like Gamma Seal as the one-off option. I also like the fact that if puts a monster in attack position so you can use it with Virate and not take too much damage if you're crashing into it. I just think Gamma Seal is perfect. I think it's perfect. And then the last one is a super spicy tech. Maybe not that spicy because I did see people putting in their builds, but I think a lot of people who aren't playing it have really underestimated this card. This card is kind of ridiculous going second because it has its own summoning condition, which firstly is very nice. It's a kind of a pank effect, and the way going second is decent with it, but it's a subpar pank effect. What this card really is a far better Valkyries Embrace. So Valkyries Embrace is a decent card, right? You read this card and it says, okay, target one Valkyrie card you have and one card your opponent controls, turn that Valkyrie to defense, and if you do, banish a monster your opponent controls. However, Valkyrie's Embrace has many downsides. Firstly, the card that you're putting into first you have to target both monsters. That's an immediate downside. Secondly, you have to turn the card to defense. If it doesn't go to defense, it's not resolving, which is why? Why is that like that? Why is it even going in the defense? It could have been if you control a Valkyrie monster, non-target banish something, and it would have been. I don't even know if it would have been played. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been good. It may be good enough, but then they also threw the a fun little condition on here. It's the only Valkyrie card that has it, and it always just cracks me up because it's like a decent card because it actually has Valkyrie in the name, which means it's searchable. So one of it's not bad, but then you read the little bottom text here right before it says the hard once per turn. It says you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn you activate this card, except Valkyrie monsters. This is the only card in the archetype that says this. Why? Why? Why does it have this condition? Why does it have this restriction? Who who thought like reading is like this card's busted. Not only does it put my monster in defense, and it doesn't even resolve if it doesn't go into defense, but it just banishes my opponent's card after a target hits. It's like a slow fucking Karma Cut or Dino Misc. Just the worst Dino Misc is. Huh. Yeah, this card's busted. I gotta put that fucking restriction on because I'm a fucking dumbass. You know what I mean? Like, half these cards are designed by dumbasses. I swear to God, this deck is, like, barely functioning. You just have to get rid of, like, a massive amount of trash when you make this deck, man. Like, another one that's, like, seems good, but it's also really fucking bad is Final Light. The fact that it's a soul charge is pretty good, but you have to pay a massive amount of life points if you want to even take advantage of the soul charge effect. And even if you don't, if you say, okay, I'm going to go easy on it this time and only summon like two, well, your opponent also gets two. And they can choose any two they want. Yeah, okay, 2,000 or less attack from the graveyard. Bro, it doesn't fucking matter, bro. Like, it doesn't even summon them into attack position. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if they summon a card with 2,000 or more defense, you can't get over it. Or like 2,200 or more defense, you actually can't get over it. Why? Why do these have these restrictions? This one doesn't even have this one would have made sense to put the restriction on. But it's not on here. It's on fucking Valkyries Embrace. I I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, like, I digress. Right. So Logath is like Valkyrie's Embrace. So what it does is it targets a fairy you have and one opponent card your opponent has and turns your fairy into defense and your opponent's monster is banished. It's very identical. However, while it might not be searchable, it does not restrict you, for one. Two, it has its own summoning condition, which is very nice. Three, the card going to defense happens at the same time your opponent's card is banished, and it just has to be a faced up card. Valkyrie's Embrace only works on face up monsters, so this works on face up spells and traps, which is very nice. Secondly, you could target itself, so even if you plan on getting rid of it, which you could get rid of, it's, that's fine. Who cares? You turn it to defense, it doesn't matter. It has pretty decent attack at 24. Uh, Also, if you do happen to play it with something like Diviner, you have an extra card that you don't want anymore, so you can just tribute it with Tria Sarkaria, and it has its own summoning condition. You activate Diviner, she triggers in hand. Unfortunately, it doesn't chain block, so Diviner will resolve, and then once she's resolved, then she'll summon herself. Logath will summon herself, and then at that point, you could, turn Diviner into defense, turn her into defense, doesn't matter, banish something, and then Tria Sarkaria tribute the two of them. Bang, you get a non-target pop on anything. Doesn't matter if it's spell trap, monster, doesn't matter. And you're summoning off of Diviner's effect. Like, you're just getting so many pluses, dealing with problematic cards while, keeping your advantage going. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you get rid of two cards, but your opponent is still getting rid of one as well. You know what I mean? Like, and you're still plussing, you're starting your combo with Diviner the way you would always start it. You don't even have to use this card's summoning condition as well, because we are playing Valhalla Hall of the Fallen. So at this, if you happen to not need to use the effect this turn on, perhaps you drew Drite, and, the reason why I like this card is because it works, if you happen to open two starters, you can get both of their effects off at the same time, so if in case one of them gets hand trapped or whatever, or disrupted, potentially you can summon the other one and still keep going. But if you happen to not need that effect, you can just do it, summon this, and then, potentially Pank type effect, have them have to deal with it. That's the beauty of Logath, is that they have to deal with it. That's why I really like this card. I'm a big fan of this card. After playing it, I really started missing it when I took it away. I think this card is pretty good. The fact that the Starlights are like $90 is like blowing my mind, because this card's pretty good. In the context of going second fairies, this card is very good. It's just like, obviously there's no good going second fairies deck except like this kind of works with it, strangely. So yeah, that's the monster list. Let's go ahead and we can briefly go over the extra deck of monsters, since we're still on the topic of monsters. I know usually people keep on the main deck, but you play Ents because in case you draw Tria Sarkaria, you draw another copy of Diviner, you have something to send, because we are playing Pot, so it could potentially banish them. So you want to be able to have some for utility's sake. Link 4s, it doesn't really matter what you play. The Link 4s I would at least like for you to seize at least Apo, The rest of them, I put these in because I like these ones. I don't have access code in real life, so I just don't even bother with it because I don't. It doesn't really bother me. I'm playing fucking Valkyries. Not to mention, do I really need a win Blink 4 in the deck that's supposed to be OTKing with its in archetypal cards? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Phoenix for some potential, utility. These two should be together. IP into Unicorn Classic, right? Lina because we can make it. Sometimes you can make it and just run it into something if you want to get rid of it, and that way you can get a surge for next turn. Since you have to get rid of it anyways before you can activate Mischief of the Time Goddess, and then Baba Barber is essentially Lina, except if you can't run into anything, you need to get rid of a non-Valkyrie monster off your board so you can activate Mischief. Baba Barber is perfect. Unfortunately, because we're skipping the end phase, this Link 2 material is you're throwing it away. You're throwing it into the fucking trash because it's essentially what Baba Barber does for you. So let's get into spells and traps. That's pretty much it. The side deck, I have no idea. I would probably just this is mostly dealing with the main spells and trap lineup in the game of Seal especially and stuff like that is dealing with monster boards. The side deck, I would probably just put a bunch of anti spells and traps. I suppose more than ever, Nibiru token is more easily dealable. Like you could deal with it a little bit easier, so maybe it's okay. If you want to sideboard that as well. And then this is just an example of all the fucking dog shit fucking Valkyrie cards Konami printed, and the fact that there's no Link monster. We'll get to what I would like. We'll talk about spells and traps first. So firstly, Raigeki in Harpies, I like them for targets for Virte, but at the same time they're decent. One of the reasons I got rid of Lightning Storm was because getting rid of dealing with monsters, baiting out negates, it's only okay. When you're dealing with monsters, dealing with back row, it's phenomenal. So you could put that on the side, but dealing with monsters is only okay. A lot of people are really good players are putting their important monsters in defense as well now, so it doesn't really deal with the issues on board. So Raigeki is just kind of the better decision when it comes to if I want to play a card like that. You know, it's okay. Raigeki is probably the first one I would consider getting rid of, and then the second one would be Harpies Feather Duster. The reason I main this is just because this card is pure advantage, right? If your opponent is even playing just a little bit of back row, it's a blowout card. You know what I mean? It's just good. I just feel like it's so hard to justify not playing it when you're playing a deck like this, even if you're not gearing your deck to deal with spells and traps. You know what I mean? It's still semi-searchable with Virte, so you can do some shenanigans with it possibly. Um, I'm happy with it. I don't know. Those two are up in the air how badly I want them in the deck or not. Next is Pot of Extravagance. Super important. Super important. You could play Pot of Prosperity, possibly. I like the +1 a little bit more. There's no one card that we're really digging for. I mean, potentially it would be nice if we really needed that Dark Ruler no more. So maybe Prosperity would be okay. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And I guess that's up to you, whoever individual's watching this, how badly you want certain cards for this in your hand. Dark Ruler no more. I know it seems counterintuitive playing an OTK deck with this, but you have to remember, Valkyries get 2 battle phases in 2 separate turns. So that means that there is always a potential for you not to get the OTK, obviously, but you could use, again, Virte to use that battle phase, get that advantage blowing up, get all these monsters on board, and then in the next battle phase, take advantage of all the cards you just banished, take advantage of all this attack gain you just got, and then attempt to swing for game after you've built up this advantage, and which also translates into why I'm playing a trap card in an OTK when going turn 2. So again, Mischief of the Time Goddess is a very cool card in the sense that it goes into the next turn. Therefore, traps that are set can be played. This card is low-key very good. This card has always been low-key really good. Firstly, I'll just talk about what you want it to do. So what it does is when you activate it, you target one card you control, and you can summon from your hand or graveyard one monster with the same type as that monster's but a different original name. So the idea is that you can summon something like Sexte by targeting something, like Erda or Virte or Drite, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Even Diviner works, even Logath works, you know what I mean? Like, you have all these opportunities because they all just have to be fairies, and they all are fairy, light fairies. They're all light fairies, except for Gamma, but, your opponent will have that. And so the idea is that on your opponent's or on your next battle phase, you can continuously keep going to these monsters, even if you had to get rid of them previously. So usually you're going to get rid of Sexte if you have something like Diviner. That way you can make Baba Barber, Lina, and, or you can make Lina crash into something. You search for a light monster with 1500 less defense. So it could be something like Virte. It could be, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of options, but it could be something like Virte. It could be Funte, even. Funte is not bad. It could be Diviner as well. You could technically summon Diviner and summon her, and then pop something if you really need that. Potentials, that's what I mean. The card has a lot of potential, and it's from hand or graveyard, which is very nice, very nice. And another thing is, it's not a hard once per turn, so if you happen to draw both copies, both of them are live at this exact same time, which is kind of nutty if you think about it. Like, this card does not have a hard once per turn. No soft per turn, once per turn, nothing. You can just activate as many as you want. Secondly, if it's destroyed by your opponent's card, it floats into another copy of itself from your deck, which is kind of cool. I'm almost tempted to run 3 of this. I know I kind of skipped forward, but this card directly is meant to sort of combo with this and with this, which I've talked about a lot. These cards are meant to combo with each other. That's the idea behind why I'm running these cards, even though they seem sort of counterintuitive. I think Dark Ruler No More is just a better card than Lightning Storm. Unfortunately, we cannot run droplets because we just don't have the resources, the ability to just get rid of a bunch of cards. It's just not really in our game plan. It's not really something we can do. Again, if we have better cards, we could, but we don't. Next, we just have swarming cards, right? Right of the Valkyries goes into this, goes into Mischief. It's very nice. I don't mind drawing it. It's decent. Sometimes, though, drawing multiples, it's not a hard once per turn. The only hard once per turn about this card is the Search for Mischief, which is kind of funny. I don't know why it's like that. I don't know. These cards are fucking weird, bro. Valhalla, soft once per turn, but doesn't really matter. It's okay. Like I said, technically this is kind of like the last card we're going to be talking about here, so I think this is a good opportunity for me to transition myself into talking about the cards I'd like to see from the deck. And firstly, a better continuous spell. Valhalla, I really just run because I don't have any better alternatives. It's a nice swarming card. It helps me summon both of my starters in the same turn if I need them. It helps get Logath out a little bit earlier, but I just don't know, man. I really don't like this card. I feel like the potential for a Valkyrie card that can do things, help you start your combo, is there. It's there. Conceptually, it's there. One of the things I would really like to see is something that's a continuous spell, and what it says is on activation, it's a foolish for any Valkyrie card, which would be very nice. So you could send something like Ride of the Valkyries if you don't need it, something to the effect of Funte. Funte can actually send any spell or trap, which is pretty interesting. If you want to run Foolish Bear, not Foolish Bear of the Goods, but if you wanted to run something like the cards that they send off of that card usually. So, what is it? The fusion that lets you draw one when you shuffle back into that. I can't remember it right now. I don't know why I'm blanking so bad on that, but I would like to see something like that. I think that would be really cool on activation, and then it's a continuous spell. So the idea is that with Sigurd can summon from the hand or graveyard. So you would summon whatever you sent to graveyard with it, and then when it's sent to the graveyard, because that's naturally where it's probably going to go from this point, it has some sort of graveyard effect. I don't know what though, because again, it kind of is counterintuitive. Like if it said something like banish this card from the graveyard to then gain like a 500 attack boost on all your cards, which would be insane, by the way. Be insane. It would be insane. Even 500 would be insane. That's how important attack points is for this deck. But then that would be kind of counterintuitive with Zweite, because then Zweite is supposed to be able to recur it. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of these cards feel sort of counterintuitive. Sigurd makes sense, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't. Why would you have us get rid of it? You know what I mean? What? It's I guess White technically brings it back, but that just seems really weird. I don't know. Maybe it should have a better on-field effect if it's going to be activated and if you really want to recur it. I have no idea. Maybe it could just be a generic search one Valkyrie card, on activation. I don't know. I would like it to be a little bit more than that. Um, Something a little bit more interesting. Because this deck does have a lot of really interesting concepts. It's so janky, but it just kind of works when you put things together. You add these janky cards that nobody really plays. Logave, Super, what is it? Super Team Buddy Force Unite. Like, we put these cards together, and it's like, wait a minute, these cards are really good in this deck. That's crazy, right? And then next, I would like to see a Link. Okay, so if it's going to be a Link 1, it needs to be completely generic. It cannot be not generic. If it's going to be a Link 2, it needs to be partially generic. So at least one Valkyrie and a Fairy monster. Because again, the whole point of the Link needs to be a, something to help you get rid of non Valkyrie monsters. The whole point of the Link needs to be something like that. It doesn't matter what the effect is. I don't need it to search anything if you don't want it to. It just has to be something like that. It's very important. I don't care what the effects are. If I were gonna care what the effects were, I would like it to say something like, if it's like a Link 3 and it says something to the effect of, if what would actually be cool if it was a Link 3 and it said something like, if all three goddess continuous spells are on the board, negate all effects your opponents control, like all monster effects, all face up effects, or something like fucking ridiculous. Because like a Link 3 is like, it can be non-generic then. If that's okay if it's non-generic, if something as fucking ridiculous as that. For one, all the goddess cards fucking blow. Like Erd is okay because it gives you a bunch of protection. Like non-target can't be destroyed by battle. That's pretty good, but the problem is it's connected to a bunch of dog shit, and it's not a Valkyrie card, so it's not searchable. It's just so fucking annoying. I don't know why not, but my digressions aside, I would like, I would really just like to see a Link do. It doesn't even matter, dude. Again, it could be something like all Valkyrie monsters just gain attack, and it has 0 attack to begin with, or something. Just like an attack gain is good enough. Like that shit is fire. It doesn't have to do anything ass blastingly good. Like I feel like the deck is on the cusp of being pretty decent. Actually, I actually think the deck is pretty decent. It can play through hand traps pretty well. Like a singular Ash does not kill this deck. A Valor does not kill this deck. Like unless your hand is pure fucking dog water, one interruption is not going to kill this deck. That's why I don't feel compelled to go for super heavy into the going turn 2 cards. Like I feel like we have enough sort of like wiggle room to go through at least 2 to 3 interruptions before we run out of steam. Usually, it could be less depending on the board. Depending on the hand you have and stuff like that. But yeah, this is the build. I feel pretty confident about this. I've really tried to lab this out for a long time. I've really thought about this like conceptually, theory, like what is the theory behind these cards' design? What is the theory behind the point to which I'm trying to go to? What kind of cards can help me sort of reach that point? I know it sounds really fucking retarded when you look at it in the context of the fact that these are Valkyrie cards, but I just find it kind of fascinating. I always find decks that are not super fucking like, streamlined to be very fun to play. Very fascinating to deck build because it forces you to have to work around them and like work around the disadvantages of the deck and put together something like an amalgamation of just nonsense, a fucking Frankenstein, right? And that's the way I felt about a lot of decks that then just ended up becoming like super streamlined. And I guess I'll just rattle like some of them off since I'm talking about nothing. You can turn off the video if you don't give a fuck about this. But one of the card like decks that I felt like that way about was Dragomaids. I thought vanilla Dragomaids was actually pretty fun to play, and then they put out the fusion, the big fusion, and that's an Omni Negate that floats into the other fusion. Ridiculous. And then I felt, and like also Chamber. I actually feel like Chamber kind of ruined that deck just because it felt so streamlined. Like it felt like, yeah, you just go into Chamber and you just get that search for the continuous spell or for the trap card or for the fusion card, and you just kind of go from there. I kind of wish they had just instead made like, I mean, Chamber's fine. I don't know, man. Maybe I kind of wish that they didn't make the Omni Negate. I felt like the Omni Negate was like a little too much. Like I felt like they could have just had more fun with the bouncing effects that they do with the pops, with the fusion. Like I felt like that would have been really cool. but instead they kind of just give you like the best. But even then, like the best like Dragon Maid board is like Spheres Tidying. You know what I mean? Like that's your best board, obviously, because Spheres is ridiculous and Tidying is really good. So I don't know. I also feel that way about a different deck. Gosh, Live Twins, Evil Twins. I felt like the inclusion of the continuous spell that's just like a fucking blanket search, and then the other one that the Link 4, it's like it just felt like a streamlined the deck. Like there was no like before we were seeing cool like Live Twin Eldritch. I personally was like messing around with a variant of Live Twin with Lair. I felt that was a really cool deck because when you got going, it worked. Like it worked really well. It was a little janky to get going. You really took advantage of the E tally type effect card because, as you know, they don't work. The live twins specifically don't work if there's other monsters on board. So they're not really meant to be worked with other archetypes. They really did try to dissuade that. But you could kind of get around it with the fact that they have an E tally. So you would activate that first, and then you would normal summon. But you couldn't really like go ham because you would be locked in the extra deck. So I made a deck that only used normal summons. Um, Gosh, if they didn't lock, then you would just play fucking like Alistair. You're like, isn't that fucking dumb? Um, but okay, yeah, I'm done rambling. This is why I like the deck. This is why I feel like this deck is pretty good. I've talked about all the points I could think to talk about. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and that's it. I'm done. Questions, comments, concerns, fucking list them. I don't care. I'll get to them. You know, if it's just like a general question, like, hey, why do you think this card's bad or something? I'll just give you my reason. You could argue with me, and you know, you could just say like, nah, you're a fucking idiot. I'm gonna fucking play Lightning Storm. Are you fucking crazy? Are you fucking insane? You know what I mean? Like, okay, sure. I'm not gonna argue with you. Like, this is what I think. That's what you think. That's what we do, right? If you made this video and you said the other way around that Lightning Storm had to be played, I would watch it and go, no, I'm not playing that. I wouldn't leave like a comment because I don't really care, but I would think to myself, no, I'm not playing that. Shit's retarded. I mean, it's not bad, but I wouldn't play it. But okay, yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, see ya.